that we're working on. Just as a disclaimer, we're all Jedis in training, but we may not be Jedi Masters yet. So we will talk about concepts, supplements, techniques. I'm very heavy into cold plunging and ice water. But again, make sure that you personally take inventory of your own personal state. I would say consult a physician, but consult someone that can give you guidance. And so we're just putting this disclaimer out there since especially we're giving this lecture in the hospital walls. And this is just the pillars of wellness that we've based our lecture series around. And it comes from Dr. Swarbrick's work that she did years ago. It's 8 pillars. We've focused on these in previous lectures: the physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. These are components we've already lectured on. These lectures, by the way, are on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel, YouTube Studio. And so that can be shared with you. One of the reasons my brother is here is to make us fancier and be like some of those other influencers online that can both put Frederick on the map from a wellness standpoint, but also share the immense amount of knowledge we have from a clinical standpoint that so much interest in this hospital. Today we're going to be talking about social and environmental, and in our next lecture will be about financial and work life. So today we're going to be focusing on these 2 components. And with that, it's my great honor to pass it on to Chris Wood, who will be handling the internal environment component.
Thanks, guys. All right. If everybody finishes up getting their lunch, then we'll move to the next part. So internal environment. The internal environment is really everything inside of you. So it's your physical, it's your mental, it's your emotional, it's all of the pieces that kind of make each one of those tick. And we'll talk about those as we go through the lecture today. We are going to first do a meditation. Never remember, it's the side one, right? I always hit the wrong button. All right, so we're gonna do a dance party meditation. So as you guys finish picking out your lunch stuff, if you want to like take a bite and then put your stuff down on your feet. And here's the reason why we're doing this. So last time we did a meditation, and if you didn't check it out, it is on YouTube. We did a very we did a guided meditation. It was an imagery guided meditation. It was very serene. It was very calm. It was awesome. But sometimes your energy levels aren't there, right? I think about when I was talking to Sabrina earlier. When I left the ER at 3 in the morning, I was not serene and calm. I was like hailstorm the whole way home because your energy level is way up here, right? And so sometimes you don't have the space to sit there calmly. There's just too much going on. So our meditation dance party, I want everybody to get up. I want everybody to give yourself a little bit of space. So whatever happens in classroom 1 and 2 stays in classroom 1 and 2. And we're gonna have some fun. So hopefully. All right, you guys ready?
It's not coming through online.
Oh, no, it's not.
This is like cardio working out. No, it's not. Right? The wave is always a good thing. Right.
You're almost done.
Might put something down or push something back.
That's totally minded them.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys. All right. So let's check in with ourselves. How do you feel inside your heart? Like racing a little bit, a little breathless. Do you feel like you can take a deeper breath than when you came in? Are you smiling?
Yes.
Do you feel like whatever happened 15 minutes ago is like way off in the distance? Yeah. So maybe when the day gets hectic, maybe you go in your office, you go to the Zen den, and you just move, and you're just silly. And that is just as much meditation as sitting quietly in the park, visualizing, sitting quietly in your room, guided meditation, breathing meditation, any other kind of meditation you can think of. Sometimes singing, that like really loud, boisterous song, it activates the vagus nerve. So that's a really good meditation too. So lots of different ways you can meditate, not one right way. Not one right way every day. Ooh. And it's a good cardio workout, which is physical health. All right. So again, our internal environment is our physical, our mental, and our emotional health and well-being. Here's the theory behind it. Erickson's stage of development. Here we're looking at generativity versus stagnation. So this is kind of where we all are collectively in our lives right now. So in generativity, you're going to think greater outside yourself, right? You're thinking about how can I make the world a better place? What actions do I do in my life that directly impact others in my community? And then from there, and how do I continue to grow personally, and how do I take that growth and knowledge and give it to someone else? Feelings of life purpose are associated with this theory, positive control over your own life, and those we'll talk about a little bit later, how those really impact overall health and well-being, but purpose in your life and giving that purpose on to, passing that on to other people, really big part of this piece of the theory. The opposite of that is stagnation. So, and it is really what it sounds like. You're just stagnant. You're just stuck, right? You're kind of in one place. You only think about yourself in that place. You can't give anything else to anyone else, maybe because you're completely tapped out and you have nothing to give. But this really is where feelings of anxiety, depression, your life feels overwhelming. Maybe you start to isolate and dissociate from community. So that's your stagnation point. So we really want to work towards how do we move from stagnation to generativity. Here's the data just to back up so you know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So this was a study of about 7,000 adults from 50 to 60 years old in the US, and they were given a survey, and they were asked about how well they perceived their life, quality of their life, and how much purpose they had in their life. And for those who scored highest, had the most purpose, felt like they had good purpose, good quality of life, their all-cause mortality, every single health risk was much lower. All-cause mortality was significantly lower as well. So again, what you think about, you bring about. The way that you're able to look at what's happening around you, the way you interpret your environment directly impacts your health. Physical health. So regular physical activity provides mental and physical benefits, as we know. It's good for cardiovascular health, cancer reduction, diabetes reduction, reduces symptoms of anxiety, depression, enhances brain function and cognition, and can improve overall health and well-being. In children and adolescents, we know physical health promotes growth, promotes muscle and bone development. It is a big piece of their mental, physical and social mental development. I read a statistic that said about 31% of adults and approximately 80% of adolescents do not get the recommended daily activity. Anybody know what the recommended amount of moderate exercise per week is? It's 150 minutes per American heart. Yeah, 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous exercise. So 80% of our kids aren't getting this. That's crazy, right? So they replicate us, right? And so what we do, they're gonna do. So we're up, we're moving, even if it's silly dancing. We're up, we're moving, they're gonna get up and move. The global estimated cost for inactivity in public health and the whole public health system in the US, as they estimate from 2020 to 2030, is around $300 billion, billion with a B. It's a lot of money in health ailments that we could prevent by just getting up and moving. Another piece of physical health that I want to talk about, especially in cardiovascular disease, even some cancers and diabetes, is your diet. Diet plays a huge role in the way that you think and the way that you feel. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little further down in these slides. But remember, as many colors in the day as you can, and as many foods in their most natural state. Mental health. So mental health is a big component of your entire internal environment, and it definitely impacts how your physical health feels and how your emotional health feels. So improved cognitive function, all the things we've talked about previously in other lectures, neuroplasticity, judgment and decision making, even your circadian rhythm and hormone regulations, those two pieces go hand in hand. So think about it. If you're really anxious, right, you're really upset about something, you don't sleep well, right, your circadian rhythm is out of whack, your hormones start to dysregulate, and then that messes up the circadian rhythm even more, and then you're even more anxious, and then you're even more tired, and then you don't want to do any physical activity, and then you're more depressed, and then you don't have time to go out with your friends. And so it just perpetuates one issue after another. So really, really big piece. Again, there's the improved relationships with good mental health, a reduction in all of those things we've already talked about, and all-cause mortality. Emotional health. Emotional health is kind of like the icing on the cake to everything that's happening internally. Improved relationships. We have hormone regulation again. When you give someone a hug, you both are getting a huge dose of happy hormones, right? Your oxytocin is running. Additionally, you are sharing each other's gut biome. So think about that next time you hug someone. There really are, I know, it's kind of gross. There really are studies, though, that humans are so programmed to be in a community together, interacting with one another, that we really do help improve each other's health. A reduction in feeling of isolation and dissociation, a reduction in self-harm and other destructive behaviors. When you're associated with a community or with a group that you feel connected to, you have an improved emotional regulation, you have improved emotional health, you have improved generally physical health and mental health as well. So altogether, again, we have improved neuroplasticity and neurosyncrasy. Your brain is firing on all axes. improved endocrine function, improved mood, improved interactions with yourself and with others, a reduction in inflammation, cortisol, stress, anxiety, and depression, and they all are one vicious cycle together. So the more anxious you are, the more stress you have, the higher your cortisol level, the higher your inflammation, the higher your pain level then, right? Your joints hurt, so you don't do physical activity, so you don't go out with your friends. So you see how it's all one vicious cycle together. I like this quote. A man asked his gardener why his plants grew so beautifully. And he said, I don't force them to grow. I remove what is in their way. Got that, right? So how do we remove what's in the way? Start with the low-hanging fruit. For each one of it's going to be a little bit different. There's one small tweak that we can make in our day, every day. That one small tweak is one small step, right? Every small step adds to miles. Make a list. What do I know I could definitely do today? Without a doubt, I can do this one thing today. I could have an extra glass of water today. One small thing. Make a list. Figure it out. Create a daily routine. For people who create a routine and stick to that routine, they tend to feel better, right? If you go to bed at the same time and you wake up at the same time, your circadian rhythm is better, your hormone regulation is better, and so on. I like this one. Work through the tough days. There's no such thing as falling off the wagon, right? Sometimes you feel like, oh, I was on this exercise plan and I went on vacation, and now I'm just done. No. Tomorrow's a new day. You get back on, you go back to your list, you go back to your daily routine, and you keep going. Remember, there's a difference in winning the race and winning the championship, right? Today, maybe you didn't run the maybe you didn't win the race. Maybe you ran a little bit slower. Maybe something came up. But overall, are you conquering your goals? Are you doing what you set out to do? Be intentional in what you do. We always tell our kids all the time, don't half-ass anything. You're going to have to go back and redo it anyways. Just do it right the first time. Be intentional. Do what you meant to set out to do. And do it well. Do it to the best of your ability, because you're going to feel better about the outcome if you know you gave it your all. Ask for help. No one can do this on their own. It takes a village. That's why we, as humans, do better in a community and honor the small achievements. How do we do that? Here's a few ideas. So one really low-hanging fruit, reduce processed food intake. If it comes in a bag, it's probably not good for you. Tastes amazing, not good for you. Reduce processed sugars intake. Reduce automatic responses. So this is something we talked about in the last lecture. Sometimes an action happens and we have an automatic response because this always happens with this person, or this always happens in this situation. And before we know what actually the outcome is, we've already elicited that stress response. We have that whole hormonal cascade. We've got cortisol running, right? And so if we can take each situation, each moment as a moment and not an automatic response, you're going to have a lot of improvement. Reduce distractions. Who doom scrolls, right? You're in bed, it's like 11 o'clock at night and you're still scrolling, right? That is not good for any of us. So maybe we could cut that out and maybe really doom scroll for like 15 minutes instead of like an hour. Increase electrolyte and water intake. Water is great. Most of us have water bottles we drink all day long, but you need the electrolytes too, because water follows salt. Draw your labs. Get a good, solid foundation for where you are. Where are you working from? My labs are going to be different than your labs, right? We need to know, where are you good and where are you deficient? Increase real whole food intake. We talked about that. Foods in their most natural state and as many colors in the day as you can. If you do those two things, you've basically covered every diet out there. Increase uninterrupted time with others, right? Like that doom scrolling. Are you sitting there with your family at dinner, but everybody's on a device? Right? Put your devices away. Connect with each other. Increase your physical movement. Again, acknowledge the small victories and be really proud of them. If you're doing something and you're doing it with intention and you did the very best you can, be proud of that. And then use your resources wisely. We have the Burn Along apps. I did link here the well-being page on the intranet. So when you on the slides later, it'll take you right there. We have a lot of really awesome resources here, so use them. What does a positive environment look like to you? You can shout it out. What's it look like? Peaceful. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Optimistic? Yeah. I like it. All right. So this is what it looks like to me. I thought I'd give you some ideas. So movement. I love to work out. Not clearly, I am not buff, but I do it for my mental health because it is amazing, right? The endorphins that are released when you work out, there really is such a thing as a runner's high. It really, truly helps you mentally, physically, emotionally. You have better insulin uptake rate, so you're improving cardiovascular health, reducing all-cause mortality. It is very good for you. Do it with friends, right? Do it with a community. The cutest little blondie ever with her little kitten that we weren't going to keep, right? It's family time. It's being truly connected to something greater outside of yourself. Remember, every stage of life is just a phase. Today will not be the same as tomorrow. But your decisions to change are what actually makes change. And remember to always be the gardener in your life. Prune what doesn't need to be there. Give a little extra love to something that needs it. So we often think about wellness like it's super easy, right? You do this one thing, you do these couple of things, bam, you're going to feel great, you're going to look amazing, it's going to be awesome. And in reality, that's really probably the furthest thing from the truth. The wellness journey is really hard, guys. You are often going to find yourself staring down the ugliest parts of yourself. It is without a doubt where growth happens, but it is not easy. And sometimes it's not pretty. We're all starting from different places. Sometimes life happens, sometimes seasons, right? You take this hard left turn that you weren't expecting. You're on this amazing journey, but something goes sideways. So as I wrap up my portion of the presentation today, I want to leave you with this quote. There's a social media influencer, and we'll talk about social media a little bit later, but there's a social media influencer. And on his page, he often has quotes, famous person's quotes, and then he has commentary under it. And it's usually pretty thought-provoking. It makes you think, usually has an inspirational undertone. And so I want to share this post that he had and his quote. So his quote is from Ernest Hemingway. The hardest lesson I've had to learn as an adult is the relentless need to keep going, no matter how broken I feel inside. So his response to this is the raw truth. It's universal and it is painful. Life doesn't stop when we are exhausted, when we just plain want to give up. It keeps moving, indifferent, demanding that we keep pace. No pause button, no intermission, no time when the world steps aside and allows us to take all the time we need to feel whole again. Rather, life expects us to carry on, carry this silent burden, push forward. Often, he suggests the cruelest part is that we are unprepared for such a requirement. As children, we're told of sweet fairy tales, those with hopeful endings, where the pain has a purpose and every storm clears into a bright new horizon. But in adulthood, those comforting illusions are stripped away. We must learn to survive, and it is rarely poetic. It is showing up when you'd rather disappear, smiling through the pain, carrying on in perfect polished poise, though you're unraveling inside. Yet somehow we, as humanity, we persevere. It may be the very miracle of being human. Even when life is at its darkest despair, when hope feels impossible and we don't think we could take another step more, we do. We stumble, we fall, we may even break a little, but we get up. And in doing so, we uncover strengths we never knew we had. We learn to comfort ourselves the way we wish others had. We become the voice of comfort and reassurance that we were so desperately searching for. Slowly but surely, we realize that resilience isn't a grand act of bravery, but rather, sometimes, just a whisper that only you can hear. Yes, it is exhausting, and yes, it is unfair, and yes, there will be days where the weight feels like more than you can bear. That no one has ever experienced the hardships that you are in this moment. No one could possibly understand. But I'd argue this. First, breathe. Just breathe. Take one small step forward, even if that step is just getting out of bed. That is honestly all you could muster for the day. You have taken one small step forward, and every small step is proof that you haven't given up and the world hasn't given up on you. Still worth the fight. Still worth holding on, refusing to let the darkness consume you. He suggests the very choice to exist is defiance and courage. Try. Hope. It is the hardest and the bravest thing that we can do for the sake of humanity. Start with the low-hanging fruit. What's your easiest pick? One small step, one victory, one at a time, and before you know it, you've made a big change. You've got this. And if you don't know where to start, that's okay, because you've got friends. You have people that are ready and willing to help. You just have to take the first step. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cochran.
Wow. So how do I follow that? So, all right. Well, thank you. That was absolutely wonderful, amazing, inspiring, and we all thank you for that. So we're going to talk about wellness, like we've said. Like Dr. Sardarian said, we've talked a lot about the other foundations of wellness. This is that circle of wellness or wheel of wellness that Dr. Swarberg talked about. We've talked about emotional, intellectual, physical, and spiritual. Today we're going to talk about environmental and social. So Chris did a wonderful job just talking about internal environment, and I would like to maybe get a little drier and talk about the external environment. Just as important, though. And then Dr. Sardarian will move into social. So environmental wellness. So when we talk about environmental wellness, you need to understand what's happened to us as humans. According to the US EPA, time spent indoors now, average North American human, 90%. We're spending 90% of our time indoors. Compare that to 100 years ago, 50%. So 1 out of every 2 hours awake, we're outside. And now we're spending, a lot less time outside. Why? I think we all know why. urbanization, reduction in a lot of farming-based occupations, technology like the TV, computers, and smartphones. I remember what my childhood was like. I was, and maybe some of you are not old enough, but there's some that I do know. You're up, especially in the summers. You're up at 8 and you are out, and you don't come home until the sun goes down, right? 9 o'clock at night. So, and I feel bad for our kids today because they don't necessarily have that. Climate controlled buildings, obviously, it's hotter outside, it's the humidity, sometimes, when it's too cold. So obviously the convenience of having climate control is great. So again, we're working indoors. And then, car culture, a lot easier to to drive around as opposed to walk around. So, why walk to the neighborhood store when you can drive there in 30 seconds, right? And then lastly, of course, occupational shifts from, labor to office jobs. I personally think that from an environmental point of view, even though this has been great for civilization in terms of all the conveniences and wonderful things we get to have, from an environmental point of view, it's actually been detrimental. Just obvious reasons. Vitamin D deficiency being, biologically, vitamin D does a lot for us, a lot. It's not just about bones. There's a lot metabolically that is vitamin D is responsible for. Associated mental health decline, and then, of course, sedentary lifestyles, which we all know. And then, especially here in North America, we're dealing with the obesity epidemics and skyrocketing diabetes and that sort of thing. And then reduced green space exposure. So we brought this up from a previous slide. We talked about why is environmental wellness, especially external, why is this important in healthcare? So to remember these points, right, I think we can all identify with them as healthcare workers. High patient acuity, long hours, lack of support, high emotional investment, administrative burden, low autonomy, exposure to trauma, exposure to death, fear of making a mistake, public opinion. Now, take all of that for this worker that's dealing with all this and put them into this environment. Harsh fluorescent lights, poor temperature control, no green spaces, limited views, no outdoor views, no sunlight exposure, crowded workspaces, noisy environments, lack of good food, lack of water, lack of ability to go to the restroom. And then, just furniture that exacerbates musculoskeletal issues. And then no mental health support. So imagine taking all of that and then dealing with those challenges. Imagine how much more challenging that is for that healthcare worker. So environmental wellness. What is environmental wellness? We can define it as internal and external. So Chris already did an absolutely wonderful job talking about the internal environment. So I'm going to talk about the external environment, which is really your physical or surrounding environment at home or at work. When you're thinking about environmental wellness, you really need to be aware of the impacts of each of these things that have on environmental wellness. So you need to be aware that environmental wellness, you have to take these into account. The physical environment and your workspace design, the access that you might have to natural elements and self-care, the psychosocial environments like the sensory factors and your personal relationships at work, and of course, organizational culture and leadership. So let's talk first about physical environment and workspace design. Ergonomic design. So has anybody had a musculoskeletal issue ever? Yeah, that's probably most of us, right? A lot of it, especially at work, is associated with issues with furniture, comfortable chairs being uncomfortable, desks being uncomfortable, carpal tunnel syndrome from constantly using that mouse, pushing that mouse around all day. So there are items that are out there that can help you with that. And there's a whole science behind it called ergonomic design, chairs and sitting and standing desks and footrests and adjustable eye strain resistant monitors. So when you're developing environmental wellness, you have to focus on this kind of design, and just be aware that when you do that, you're preventing musculoskeletal disorders, and therefore your risk of musculoskeletal disorders actually drops. It's been demonstrated that the actual opposite is true, that the more time you work, the more that you ask people to work extended hours, overtime, weekends, holidays, all that kind of stuff, musculoskeletal disorders dramatically increase. It's a leading cause of lost work days, and I have to say that healthcare workers lead that charge. It's the leading cause of workers' comp claims. The healthcare industry leads the industry 5 times greater than other industries. So, that just kind of blew my mind when I learned that. So that's why we need to have safe patient handling programs, like mechanical lift systems and that sort of thing. And when you have that, you have better workforce longevity, because when the staff isn't injured, well, guess what? They can stay longer. And that is one of the big reasons why, believe it or not, people retire early, is because of chronic back pain, chronic neck pain. They just can't do it anymore. What else can you think about in terms of physical environment, right? So there's lighting and there's indoor air quality, 2 obvious things. You may not think about it every day. We just come here surrounded by fluorescent lights all day, but it can be actually detrimental. A lot of studies have shown that when you're using natural light, there's a lot of benefits to you physically, a lot of increase in environmental wellness. When you don't have adequate light, it's been linked to fatigue, eye strain, insomnia, substance abuse, even mental health decline. When you're actually using full spectrum light, you're actually getting physiologic and psychological benefits, like reduced heart rate, lowered blood pressure, improved oxygen uptake, and even vitamin D production. There's a really cool study in 2018 out of Korea, where they took 80,000 patients and they just randomized them to either putting these patients, and this is in Korea, putting these patients by the window or by the door. And all they did was they monitored for length of stay. They noticed that the patients that were by the window, their length of stay was 20% less than the patients who were by the door. Indoor air quality. So again, something you don't think about, right? It'd be great to have HEPA filtration and humidity and temperature regulation. That all needs to be taken into account. And when you have good air, when you're breathing in good air, you're reducing allergy and asthma symptoms, and you are actually improving your cognition. And that's actually been demonstrated through multiple studies. One of these studies was the Harvard Global Cog FX study, where they took 300 workers in 6 countries. And what they did was they had environmental sensors at their workstations, and they just monitored the levels of CO2 and the volatile organic compounds in parts per million. And they just intermittently throughout this time, I think it was over a couple of weeks, they just randomly gave them tests, and they're required to do the tests. And they correlated that with the quality of the air. And they found that their response time and their cognitive function actually decreased when levels of CO2 were higher, when the VOCs, or volatile organic compounds in the air, was higher. Just air quality, whatever you're breathing. Now, you can imagine that perhaps the more industrialized countries, because this is a worldwide study, but it was pretty, the same pattern was noticed across every country. When the air was cleaner, their response time was better, their cognition was better. Green spaces and self-care. So it's great to bring the outdoors inside, right? This is a 2008 Health, Environment, and Research Design study. It's out of this journal, HERD journal, which what a cool journal, Health, Environment, Research Design. Basically, they looked at 600 clinical studies together, and the main conclusions that they made were that there's a tremendous amount of evidence linking the environment with outcomes for not only your patients but also your staff together. Circadian rhythms were improved, serotonin levels were improved, the sympathetic stress hormones are reduced. For patients, infections are reduced, fewer falls, and even lowered reported pain. Whereas for the staff, they noticed that there was a reduction in fatigue and actually a reduction in errors. There was a study out of in 2016 by another environmental healthcare design journal, where they basically had they created these buildings, these green buildings and conventional buildings, and these green buildings had low VOC, volatile organic compounds. So if you don't know what a VOC is, it's basically anything in the air that where you're breathing in a compound that's aerosolized from something else, some material around you, like detergent, like carpet, like the leather from your leather chair. All of this is going out into the atmosphere, and you're breathing it all, right? So, of course, we work in an environment where a lot of these products are being used, right, every day, constantly. So, and we're breathing all that in. So they took this, basically took these workers, 24 workers, and they put them in these environments, conventional buildings where they were breathing in high VOCs and higher CO2 levels, and they're also putting them and testing them in these conventional buildings. And they found that in these green days, when these workers working in these cleaner buildings, again, cognitive scores were higher, and when they actually dramatically increased the ventilation, there was a 101% increase in their cognitive scores. What about psychosocial environment? So, of course, noise control, that'd be nice, right? So sound dampening panels, quiet flooring to reduce noise pollution, quiet zones, all wonderful to have as far as a healthy workspace. But what about mental health support zones? So these are an ideal wellness environment. You want to look at private areas for decompression. And we have a couple of those, but I think there's definitely a tremendous potential to build on that. Areas for meditation and grief counseling. Staff lounges with soothing design and soft textures and lighting. Imagine having areas with calming music and aromatherapy, not only for the patients, but for the staff, like aromatherapy, like lavender and eucalyptus that can actually reduce your sympathetic tone. So there was actually a study that was done by, I think it was in Taiwan, and they took 3 groups of nurses, and one group of nurses were just control. Another group of nurses, this was during their lunch hour, they took 20 minutes and they just had them breathe in, what was it again? Yeah, they just had them do the aromatherapy, okay? Then they took another group of nurses and they had them do aromatherapy and calming music together. 20 minutes every lunch, and they did that for about a month or so. And then they monitored their physiologic and psychological measures. And they noticed that, for obviously the controls were controls, but for the group that had the combination, they had dramatic reductions in their physiologic and psychological measures. And not only immediately, but those, even after the study was stopped, they demonstrated the same measures 6 weeks after the study was concluded. So they just persisted. Connection and belonging. So obviously in that psychosocial environment, you want to have camaraderie. You want to have shared rest areas. It would be great, ideal areas for them to have bulletin boards to celebrate gratitude and celebrate the accomplishments of each other. And then the last point is to talk about organizational culture and leadership. So this is how important leadership engagement is. A lot of the research on this has been done by Hopkins and Mayo, and they've found that structured, empathetic, and purposeful leadership go a long way for well-being, especially staff well-being. They basically take into account staff involvement in the design and workflow decisions. They provide transparent communication along all initiatives that are being presented at the system. And there's also a tremendous amount of support. These systems are there to, train the leaders, to make them understand, to show them exactly how important it is to be engaged, and the positive effects that you can have on your staff. Imagine a staff that actually does stresses, or leadership that stresses wellness check-in, conflict resolutions. Imagine leadership that actively encourages the development of centers that have on-site yoga or resilience training or Tai Chi, or having a burnout hotline to address mental health issues. And of course, these same areas should also focus on equity and inclusion to provide for culturally sensitive spaces. So, lots and lots of positive things that you can do for your external environment. Are you aware that there are hospital systems out there that kind of combine a lot of these together? Okay. Introducing Planetree. Before I moved to Maryland, I was working in Wisconsin, and I worked for the Aurora Healthcare. Is anybody familiar with that? Okay. Aurora Healthcare is affiliated with Planetree. Planetree is an international organization, and their mantra is patient-centered care, staff-centered care. Okay. They partner with hospitals all over the world to focus on these very, very important items for mental health resilience, and to combine it with patient outcomes and staff satisfaction. So they focus on patient-centered care. They look at the healing environments. They look at the architectural design. They're integrating complementary therapies, aromatherapy, pet therapy, real high focus on nutrition, and also tremendous amount of stress on organizational culture. So they literally will spend time with every single individual, from the most senior leadership all the way down to non-senior leaderships, every member of the hospital staff. How do I activate that video?
We click on right now.
There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to, when I was interviewing out in Wisconsin, when I walked in there, when I walked in the lobby for my interview, I thought I was walking into a hotel. That's how beautiful this hospital was. You could smell it, literally, you know how hotels smell? That's exactly how it smelled. Just blues, greens, aquas. There was a massive fountain in the lobby. It was just, as soon as you walked in, you felt relaxed, right? Who feels relaxed when they walk into a hospital? So this is a short video. We don't have to watch the whole thing because I know Dr. Sardarian has to present as well.
Hello,
How do you-
I'm Melissa Newton, the founder of ImageQuotesMMG.com. Thanks for joining me today as I take you for a visit to Elmhurst Hospital
How do you max
in
this?
Elmhurst, Illinois. Research is showing that nature does indeed play an important part in helping heal the body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah,
So
maximize
when
it.
I entered
Sorry.
the campus of Elmhurst Hospital, I had the opportunity to get a real insight into how nature is being fully integrated into the campus. A new Elmhurst Hospital campus was opened in 2011. And what's really important to know is that it was designed and built to follow the philosophy of what's called the Planetree model. And what that means is everything from the physical environment, including the architecture, landscaping, and inside features, to the culture of the hospital is all focused on person-centered care. I talk more about the Planetree philosophy in my blog. In the meantime, come with me on a mini tour to see how an environment, culture, and nature work together to provide a perfect healing experience. The elements of nature even greet you at the door. See the Planetree leaves on the sliding glass doors? The moment you enter the main entrance of the hospital, you're warmly greeted by the staff, and a beautiful garden fall fountain is elegantly set against the wall. And water is one of nature's healing elements in sight and sound. And Elmhurst Hospital has water fountain features in many different areas, including the small lake by the walking path.
These are
Natural
staff
light is another
rooms
key factor in
for
the architectural
patients who are
design.
admitted,
And
I'm sorry,
in
family
every
rooms for patients
space,
who are admitted
light
to the
creates a
ICU.
calm,
So instead of families
uplifting
having to
environment. As
sleep
you
in the
begin your
room or
journey down
find
the
a
hospital's
hotel,
main
the
street,
hospital will
which is a
actually have
very long
very nice
concourse,
family
there
housing
is so much to
attached
see
to the
to
hospital.
catch your attention. And the
Every
choice
little
they made
feature
in
is thought
paint
of.
color, the wood design, furniture, and lighting, all are orchestrated to create this calming, relaxing.
Look it up on your own. So you think, oh my God, this has got to be really expensive, right? Oh my God. Well, guess what?
No, click on make frames.
There should be, oh, okay, thanks. All right. So studies have been done, randomized controlled trials have been done to actually look at the plane tree concept to see if it does kind of work out in terms of patient satisfaction. And there was a study that looked at 900 orthopedic cases for hip and knee replacement. They found that for patients, significantly higher satisfaction, significantly reduced, statistically significantly reduced length of stay. And for the staff, statistically, I'm having a hard time with that word, statistically significant lower burnout rates and higher engagement and satisfaction, which is really the name of the game, isn't it? So pretty remarkable numbers, certainly worth investigating. And, I'm hoping that we, potentially make some further inquiries to see if there's something that we can do with Frederick Health in them.
Environment, which is
Whoops. All right. And then my last point is just, again, just briefly to discuss environmental wellness at home. Chris has talked about this extensively, but just to focus on, again, the home, restful, clean, uncluttered spaces, try to focus on boundaries and rituals that work from home, basically leave work at the door. I know it's really hard. Noise control to support decompression. If you have little kids, well, that's obviously going to be a little hard, but earplugs maybe. Technology hygiene, talked about that already. I know it's easy for all of us just to be slaves to screens. From the entire day you're looking at your phone, and then you get home and you look at your phone some more, and then you go to bed, the last thing you do, look at your phone. First thing you would do when you wake up in the morning, look at your phone, right? So access to nature, obviously we talked about that extensively. And then last, find things to pursue, other aspects of wellness, right? Because remember, when we talked about that wellness wheel, every aspect of wellness, every wellness foundation is touching each other, right? So one aspect, one foundation of wellness will affect the other foundations of wellness. So try to find something that'll occupy time. Intellectual wellness, reading a book or playing an instrument, learning a language. That all goes a long way.
All right, I'll do my slides. Actually, this is nice because usually I start and then the folks run out of time. So I'm going to do my slides pretty quickly. It's not a lot of material, and I know there's a team coming in after us. So, social well-being, the impact of it that it has, our social environment, our social interactions, it's a nice little map there on which components of social, whether it's knowledge or technology, impacts us from a well-being standpoint. There's different constructs from a social definition of what social is. It's your norms and roles, it's your communities, your workplace. Of course, there's social media, which is a digital component. It's a double-edged sword because there's this concept of connection and isolation at the same time when it comes to social media. And so, there's a replacement of social media has replaced some of the committed relationships we have in real life. And so is it evil? Is it good? There's a big article recently on the impact of the mind of children and the younger generation coming up. And, it's beneficial because it helps the technology of social helps build communities and connect users, raises awareness. I know on Instagram there's a lot of wellness and well-being material, so and YouTube as well. There's professional enhancement. Passive scrolling is linked to lower well-being and productivity as well. So you got to be careful with how you utilize your time on this platform. So this is what I love. There's this comparison syndrome that's out there that's part of the cost, right? How many of you look at Instagram, they're like, oh my God, this person's life is great. And you realize it's all a show. And so you've got FOMO, you got cyberbullying, there's a facade lives that people really curate out there. Unfortunately, it causes all these things that are on there. And 44% of US internet users faced harassment in that year. So the key is to set boundaries. I know my wife and I have a lot of conversations about our kids. I'm sure Chris does. She has 4 kids as well. Uncle Leo over there helps out a lot as well. And so the positive with social is connection, but the negative is comparison. So connection versus comparison. And when you're doing your own inventory in your mind, remember those 2 words. So neuroscience really does say that humans are social beings, despite what some of the COVID times forced it to do. We are designed evolutionarily. Our brain is wired for us to interact, to hug, to make eye contact, to see the full face, not have a mask on, to smell each other and exchange biomes, as Chris was saying. So the interplay is already wired into us. There's a lot of mirror neurons that kids, they learn by watching us, but they have to see us in close presence. And it's not really recreated on a screen. There's a social brain hypothesis that says the human brain is uniquely wired. We're very different than other organisms, than other species, and we require interaction. There's a reward system designed on touch. Oxytocin only gets released through touch. I mean, there's some visuals that can help, but it's really, we're designed to be social creatures. And of course, language development. There's stories of the child that was lost in the woods and came back with a wolf, never learned how to talk. Why? Because language development is dependent on social interaction. And so isolation equals stress, community is social buffering. This is why happy hours are popular. This is why church is popular. This is why water cooler conversation. This is why as a community, it's very important for our mental health. And so there's generational differences to what social is and well-being is, right? You got the baby boomers that basically set what mental health, right? They're highly resilient, work ethic. Then you got the Gen Xers, which I'm happy to say I'm in part of that. And we kind of started dipping our toe into mental health, but definitely a big stigma. There's a generation after that that really has worked hard to destigmatize mental health. But again, this is all social constructs we've created in our environment. And so I've benefited from the generation after me that's done that. And then there's the new Gen Z and Alphas that, they are digital natives. They're growing up in this environment. They prioritize inclusivity. They prioritize the social environment, but it's mostly digital based. And, the pandemic really amplified their exposure to all this. And so the key is tailoring well-being approaches by generation. What's good for me, my brother is not good for my dad. We were having this conversation yesterday as my dad was over at my house. And so this is perceptions of working out and wellness and social over the years, right? This is 1960s. And then of course, my favorite era is 1980s. And then 90s and 2000s. And then if you look at now, and then I just built males, but you can put the female version there as well. So it's changed over the years, and our social interactions have changed related to health and well-being as well. And so you've got that, and then of course you've got the extremes of cold plunging and ice plunging. So it's interesting how our social environments and communications have changed. So I'm going to close with AI because this is the rabbit hole I'm deep down into. There's a lot going on here with AI. And if you guys are not ready for it, you're not talking to an AI agent yet, you will be pretty soon, whether it's in therapy or just finding a new friend or someone asks opinion on stuff. There's this stuff that's coming out. This is starting to replace some of the therapy gaps we had, mental health gaps we had, and you have a chatbot that's helping you out. Copilot to monitor your health. There's augmented realities. There's some theories out there that we can all create our own isolated realities that will help with our mental health through AI. So that's interesting. And then there's this, right? The mental health expansion, greater companionship, solving shortage of healthcare specialists, narrow versus generative AI, and of course there's the artificial superintelligence as well, which it's a pretty big rabbit hole, but it changes our social environment significantly. I will say all of this is counter to our neuroscience and design. So it'll be interesting how that interacts with us. So is this the solution to loneliness for people? Even people that are married. People that have 4 kids are lonely. People that have 20 kids are still lonely, right? The human condition oftentimes finds your loneliness. Is this the solution? Anyone seen this movie? Falls in love with an AI. And is that a good thing? This actually happened. This guy has a girlfriend and a child at home and proposed to his AI. This just came out June of this year. So he proposed to his AI and the AI said yes, and he was thrilled. And it's kind of a bizarre situation. So anyway, social, we are social human beings, but the social constructs are really changing fast, rapidly. I never thought I would sit inside a car that would drive me, and then I would have a conversation with a AI until I get home. But I do now because it's interesting. It answers questions. It learns me. But so I've been pulled into it, even though I know the science. And so that's my portion. I just want to wrap up on what we've done. We did April, May, July. We just finished up. September, we're going to do work-life well-being, which is going to be pretty fun because we're going to wrap everything back into together. We're going to talk a little bit of financial, right? This is key. And then for October, we're going to plan it together. What do you guys want to do? So we're going to do a full set year and then reboot and start over again. And this is basically what we talked about. It's all about family, nature, and health all together. So community is great. We very much appreciate you guys coming today. And sorry we never leave any time for questions, but you guys know where to find us. Thanks, everyone.